Welcome, everyone. Good to see some familiar names here. We'll get started here in call it 90 seconds. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started here in about 90 seconds. Well, we'll get started here in a few seconds. Would you mind sharing the slides for a few visual cues?
You talking to me, Frank?
Sorry, no, my slide. Sorry, I don't. Kadesha, was that you or Chance?
I think Chance will start sharing her screen here soon.
Alrighty.
Yes, just one moment.
While folks are coming in, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, your name, organization, and location. City, state. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name's Frank Woodruff. I'm Executive Director at the Community Opportunity Alliance. Chances we're seeing the last slide. We should probably start at the beginning. It's okay. So my name is Frank. So welcome. You've logged into a peer learning network, which is an initiative of the Alliance to highlight initiatives within the community development field that offer programs and initiatives of our member state associations. We are a field building organization for community development. Our primary membership are state and regional CDC and affordable housing associations. The relationship between those network organizations and the local organizations that serve communities more directly is a really unique unique relationship that adds value to the national organizations that participate with them, like ourselves, to their member organizations at the local level, and most importantly to the communities that are served within those states and regions. And we have picked economic development as a as a focus area for programmatic efforts that we want to focus on in 2025. We did one at the end of 2024. This is one of 4 that we'll be featuring this year. But we think that not only is the relationship really unique between the regional organizations and local organizations, but that economic development within the community development space is, we think, needs a little tighter definition around what it is and what it isn't. And so we wanted to put forward what we kind of think of as identity building for that kind of work, in order to help organizations learn from each other, innovate, be more productive, and efficient. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to preview the agenda for us. We are doing some welcome and introductions. We're going to do an icebreaker here in a second. We'll be asking you to come off of mute. These are peer learning networks, right? So we have these formatted in such a way to get us all sharing with each other. We are going to hear from our featured presentation from the state of Massachusetts on their small business technical assistance program. We'll facilitate a little Q&A with our featured presenters, and then we'll spend about the last third of the meeting or so in breakout rooms. But before we do that, if Chance, you can feel free to launch the evaluation poll. we are trying to evaluate the benefit that this initiative, our Peer Learning initiative is having. And so we have a pre and a post evaluation poll, this one obviously being the pre-evaluation poll. We'll ask you similar questions in a poll at the end. We do ask if you have a second, we'll take 30 seconds for people to fill this out. And then we'll move on with the presentations. If you do not see the poll, you can go into the Zoom's, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there are a series of buttons. There should be one labeled poll or similar. If you click that, the poll may be hiding on you. Anyone having a hard time finding it? Waiting for a few more respondents to come through. All right, here they come. Excellent. Oh, okay. Chance, I'll let you guide me when you think we should end.
I will go ahead and close the poll. Actually, you can close the poll window once you've completed the poll. I'm going to leave it open so that it flashes up for any newcomers that join us.
Wonderful. Okay. And you can okay, yeah, if you could go to the next slide then. So we'll move on. So thank you everybody for that. We want to track our progress and effectiveness on these presentations over time. So as I said, we, within community development, we think the economic development conversation could use a little bit tighter definitions to what kind of programmatics fit within that rubric. And we've been testing out a number of high-level kind of categories, activities that we think are the most common within the field of local community-based development organizations. Including the 5 that are listed here. Some, if maybe not all of this, won't be necessarily surprising, but both kind of within the field and within these presentations for the rest of the year, these are the types of initiatives we'll be putting forward, including commercial facility development and financing, leveraging assets from anchor institutions like hospitals and universities and schools of higher education, healthy food access. So think of like farmers markets, food trucks, that body of work, training and career pathways, or some would coin that perhaps workforce development, and of course support for local entrepreneurs, which is the focus of today's conversation around small business. So with that, we're going to do a little bit of an icebreaker here, try to get people to come off of their microphones if they wouldn't mind. Chance, I think you can stop sharing screen so we can see each other a little bit more easily. There have been a lot of changes at the Small Business Administration at the federal level, and those impacts are having downstream effects. And so I think I know not all of us know each other here, but there are impacts that we've certainly heard about at the Alliance, both in DC as well as impacts that are decisions that are impacting our members. And so want to hear a little bit about what your interaction with the SBA has been like lately. Has it been productive? Have you heard, have any decisions come around about how they're changing, how they're doing business? I want to know if anyone wanted to start us off with a SBA related comment. This is for, good question, Roberto. Yes, this is for everyone. And we all know Roberto's never shy to stand up. So if you got something to offer, Roberto, please do.
No, lately, I would say it's been it's still very good. We also have a VBOC here, so whenever we have a request or a call for information, they've been super helpful. Frank and Angela and the gentlemen that are over the VBOC, they've been responsive here. As far as technical assistance or leading a session, the funding portion of the conversation is a little bit different.
And are you interacting with a local or regional office, Roberto? I missed that. Or is it?
Oh, so we actually, we do our local and our regional.
Okay,
We have a relationship with both.
great. Okay. Anyone else?
I could jump in, Frank. I'm also one of the panelists, but Yadi from the MACDC. And we have collaborated with the SBA in a variety of ways. Most of it is just ensuring that our CDCs have the support and information needed from the SBA. They had informed us when this rolled out upon the new administrator taking office that there are stricter eligibility requirements with the SBA lending programs, that they require 100% of business ownership led by either a U.S. citizen or a U.S. national or a lawful permanent resident. And, you know, before, if someone had a visa or was married to someone and it was in that process, they could still be eligible. But now, you know, that ownership is no, you know, visa ownership flexibility is no longer up for eligibility. So.
Thanks for that, Yadi. Yeah, I've heard similar. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll move along. This will be a conference, you know, we'll have more chances to exchange information like this as the meeting goes on. So let's get to, I believe our featured presentation is next. If you could, I think we'll just get, what I'll do is I'll introduce Yadi de Jesus. Yadi is with the Massachusetts Association of Community Development Corporations. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself and her colleagues. But the state of Massachusetts, from my point of view, has a pretty unique state program that supports small businesses and small business technical assistance through the community development field and CDCs within the state of Massachusetts. I'm not saying that doesn't happen anywhere else in any other states. I couldn't say that for certain, but I do think it is unique and particularly effective, or at the very least, very good for us all to learn from. So with that, I think I'll pass it over to you, Yadi.
Thank you, Frank. All right, let me just share my screen with my slides. And if I could just have, once it shares, a thumbs up that you can see the slides, just because I have multiple screens open. Perfect. All right, well, thank you, Frank, and everyone at the Community Opportunity Alliance for having us today and highlighting our program in our state of Massachusetts. As he said, my name is Yadi de Jesus, and I'm the Director of Economic Development at MACDC, which stands for the Massachusetts Association of Community Development Corporations. Today, I'll be walking you through the Small Business Technical Assistance Program, which, as many of you are already aware, supports entrepreneurs here in our state of Massachusetts. And we're really working hard to build a strong ecosystem for, inclusive economic growth. So a little bit about who we are at MACDC. We are a membership organization representing about 64 CDCs across Massachusetts. And our mission is really to strengthen the community development sector so that local organizations can create healthier, more equitable communities. And we are also focusing on three important pillars, which is building capacity for the sector, making sure that we're fostering healthy neighborhoods through housing and economic opportunities, and advancing racial equity and economic equity. I'm going to go over just a quick overview of the Small Business Technical Assistance Program for those that are not familiar with it. Some historical context: the SBTA program began here in early 2000s to really fill in the gap of supporting small and micro businesses, especially in underserved communities. It is a state-funded program with its own line item in our Massachusetts legislature. Funding goes to a variety of nonprofit organizations, but many of which are CDCs and CDFIs that provide technical assistance support for things like hands-on business planning, marketing, accounting, bookkeeping, and a lot more. Recently, in February of 2025, our administration actually switched the oversight from the Mass Growth Capital Corporation to a newly merged agency called the Mass Development Agency. They are now sort of like funneling the funding for this program, and they're in charge of bringing economic development and housing production together. So today, a total of 73 nonprofits organizations, including CDCs and CDFIs, are receiving state funding from SBTA, which is really a testament of the program's growth and its impact. In the picture here, this is our small team at MACDC. We're very small and mighty. Behind me with the red tie is our director of public policy. He helps me a ton with advocacy. And so, we really play a major role in ensuring that this program not only exists, but really it thrives with funding and support from our legislature. We've been a leader really for the last few years for this program since its inception. First, we convene our membership, including our next presenters that are going to sort of like walk you through a little bit about what they do in their own community. And we make sure that their policy goals really align to ensure that there's impact stories that are happening on the ground, being heard at the legislature, right? Making sure that our representatives and our senators are aware about the impact of this program. Second, we engage with those state leaders like the Secretary of Economic Development, members of the Joint Committee for Small Business at the State House. And third, at our annual lobby day, which brings over 200 CDC staff members to the State House, and we advocate for their individual priorities, including the SBTA program. And then lastly, we really push for an increase in funding every year. Right now, for FY26, we are really making sure that the legislator could fund us at 10 million, so it could increase from the 7.5 million that's currently in place. So let's take a quick look at the program's recent funding history since I joined MACDC. In FY23, we had about $7 million at the legislature. It dipped down to $5 million in FY24, but we were really successful in advocating to raise it back to 7.5 this year. Unfortunately, in FY26, we are aiming for for a $10 million investment, but to try to meet the demand. But we're hearing from the administration that it will be a tough budget year, especially with all of the current funding cuts coming from the federal level. I don't know that it will be funded at 10 million, but we're hoping that it either stays at level or there's no, reduction in funding again. And so, the SBTA program isn't just a public sector initiative. It's a platform that's like cross-sector collaboration. It's our local banks really care about this program because technical assistance, as you may know, helps a lot of the entrepreneurs on the ground become capital ready, and it reduces the lending risk. It expands the lending pipeline, and it just makes it easier to have entrepreneurs be capital ready for traditional lending. In the philanthropy sector, it's really a strategic investment that I would say complements the state dollars, in which aligns with equity missions. And so the foundations really care about that. The CDFIs, CDCs, local banks, Chamber of Commerce, they all work together through the SBTA program to expand the access to capital, host trainings, networking events, and even co-sponsor events and workshops. I think overall, the SBTA has been a win-win in our state. Small businesses gain support, institutions benefit from stronger, better prepared small business clients, and so we're all happy. So I think the only thing that I wish this program had was just more more engagement and more funding at the state level. So which is why we have to continuously advocate on a yearly basis. At MACDC, we're, beyond funding advocacy, we're also focused on building capacity for those TA providers that are in our membership through the Melking Institute. We offer a business development certificate program, which covers everything from marketing to client assessment to really equip that TA provider with the proper skills. And then we also offer another training called the Mindshift Business Blueprint, which is a coaching program that helps providers refine their service delivery and improve that client engagement. In July, actually, we're bringing back another training through MKI called the Fundamentals of Opportunity Finance course, which introduces the CDFI world to folks that are not CDFIs. So providers can really have a better understanding of capital flows and how they could become a CDFI if they wanted to. And lastly, another key effort that I lead is the Community Business Network. This is a quarterly peer exchange with, over 65 plus participants in the business sector, including CDCs, CDFIs, local banks. And oftentimes I like to invite, guest speakers like the SBA, LISC, the IRS Taxpayer Advocacy Group, and, many others, just to ensure that we're discussing emerging trends, best practices, and what is out there for our small businesses, right? What is happening within this year, any grant opportunities, et cetera. And I know we're at time. I didn't want to go over my 10 to 12 minutes, but thank you again for your time. If you do have questions, I'm happy to answer them all, and feel free to reach out to me at yaritzad@macdc.org and or visit our website. We're really here to help or partner with you. So I would like to pass it on to my CDC colleagues at the Community Development Partnership, Tricia Murray and Pam Anderson.
Okay, thanks. I think I successfully navigated the tech. That's always my biggest challenge. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tricia Murray, and I'm here with my colleague, Pam Anderson. We manage the business and credit programs at the Community Development Partnership. The Community Development Partnership, or the CDP, is a Massachusetts community development community development corporation. I spoke too soon about the technical difficulties. So, our mission is to lead the Lower Cape in building a diverse year-round community of people who can afford to live, work, and thrive here. We have a 30-year record of successful community-based engagement to meet the needs of year-round residents living and working on Cape Cod's 8 outermost towns. And before I go any further, it was suggested to me that not everyone knows where Cape Cod is, so let me move to that slide. So Cape Cod is in Massachusetts. It's the peninsula that extends into the Atlantic Ocean and of course in the northeastern part of the United States. The communities in yellow are the towns that we work with. They are all classified as yellow. The year-round population in those communities range between 3,000 and 12,000 people. The vast majority of the businesses are small, with between 1 and 10 employees, and many of those businesses are seasonal. So the CDP supports the nurture the launch and growth of small businesses in 3 ways. The first way we do that is by offering SBTA. This is a list of many of the main topics that we offer SBTA on. Since the inception of the program, we've worked with over 3,100 small businesses, and in this current fiscal year, we've worked with over 290 small businesses with 6 weeks left, so I'm sure it'll be well over 300. The second way that the CDP promotes its mission is by offering workshops. And to Yari's point earlier, One of our local banks is our workshop sponsor, so they give us money as part of, because they like the workshops, they appreciate us helping businesses get ready for loans. These are a list of the workshops we offered in the current year. It's a mix of in-person workshops, hybrid workshops, one-day workshops, or series workshops. They were all offered in collaboration with SCORE or the county or a municipality in one instance, or other nonprofits. So collaboration is really important to us. And as you can see, we had a total of 18 workshop sessions reaching almost 400 participants. The third way that we promote economic development in our region is by offering microloans. Our microloan program is for people who aren't ready for a traditional loan yet. It's our own revolving loan fund, so we have some flexibility. The stats are there. We average about 9 loans a year, totaling around 200,000. It's really a game changer for folks. The one nice thing about our microloans is that we're able to create loans that reflect the seasonal nature of some of the businesses and are able to tailor loan payments accordingly. We are always trying to promote all the great small business services that we have. And so we do that in a number of manners. We are members of all the local chambers. So, we work with chambers to promote, as well as other nonprofits and community organizations. We also have a weekly and monthly small business e-newsletter that is promotes our services, as well as other organizations like SCORE or the SBA. We do meet with clients regularly, both in our office, and although those 8 towns, it's not a lot, you wouldn't think it was a big deal to come to our office. It is actually a challenge. There's not really public transportation, particularly in that part of the Cape. So we offer regional office hours at various locations throughout the Cape. So I will let Pam tell you about what our, when we do meet with clients, what that looks like.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pam Anderson. I'm the Director of Business and Credit Programs for the Community Development Partnership. And, how do we help? First we start with identifying the needs. So for some clients, they come in with something in mind and they already know the questions to ask and what they're looking for. For others, it is often a ask question session where we try to hone in and figure out what it is that they're looking for or what their needs are. We'll teach them skills, whether it's organizational skills, teaching them how to do calendar blocking, or, figuring out ways that they can make time for all of the working on your business tasks instead of the working in your business tasks. We'll offer options. So if they're trying to come up with a marketing plan, what different marketing venues do they need to use, and help them identify what ones will work for them and what process to use. We'll lay out processes. So for someone that wants to start their business, we'll go through the process of identifying that they need to create their organization or their DBA. Then they get the EIN, get their state tax stuff set up, open their bank account, work with them through that whole process of getting those items done. We'll help them find the right tools. With record keeping, one of the things that we always say in our record keeping workshops is about, they have to pick the right tool that they will use, because if they're not going to use it, it doesn't make any sense. Then we'll also make referrals, whether it's to SCORE for a workshop or for somebody, a mentor that has specific experience that meets their needs, or other professional service providers, whether it's a transactional law clinic or a volunteer attorney with a local organization. But one of the things that I find when I went to a leadership conference recently was to think about what we do on a regular basis. And I love this image for that because really what I do is teach and learn every day. So I'll take the things that I learned from one client and I'll add that to my tool belt so I have more resources to share with the next clients. So what does a session work like? The first session will usually introduce our organization and get to an opportunity to hear the client's background or story. Then we're going to work on identifying their needs and what they want to accomplish through our work together, set some goals, have more conversation, and look at how the goal setting happens outside the process. And, with each session, we have to be careful because when someone comes in and they know very little about starting their business, I don't want to make their to-do list too big so that they feel overwhelmed. So we try to tailor it to just a few items between sessions so that they can feel that they've accomplished something. And all of this is a discussion and identifying what we think is possible. Often we'll lay out options for a topic and help them identify what they think their next steps need to be based on the answers to those questions. We provide help setting up and understanding the processes and where they can get additional trainings, whether that's video trainings, SCORE trainings, or other local organizations that participate in training in our area. We'll identify a timeline, how often to meet, and how they need to be prepared to achieve their goals. And then we'll also set up a follow-up appointment and identify what their homework or tasks are to complete before their next meeting. One of the big services that we sort of really perform is to be their accountability partner, especially for business owners that work all on their own and don't have somebody to fill that role. Because if they set a time to come in and meet, it really does give them the incentive to get the things done that they want to accomplish. And then at the next meeting, we'll really talk about, review their accomplishments. And oftentimes it's reassuring them that if they accomplish 2 of the 3 things that they set out for themselves, that is a success, not a failure. And then we continuously provide resources. We work with a lot of organizations in our region in both a collaborative way and to provide resources, whether it's through programming, referrals, our office hours that we provide regionally for events that we do, or our goal is to build long-term relationships with all of these organizations because all of that ultimately helps our clients. On the legislative side, our CEO is on the board of MACDC and also the State Rural Policy Advisory Committee. We've established long-term relationships with our state and federal legislators. As Yari mentioned earlier about the MACDC Lobby Day, Tricia and I have been to many of those as well, and we've met with our legislators and their staff. The Community Business Network has been a great opportunity to collaborate with other CDCs across the state. This started during COVID, where we met on a weekly basis to help us all share information as everything was coming to us fast. It has been a great resource, and I'm happy to say that we have continued it post-COVID on a less often basis. And also our whole team does have our business development certificates and participated in that program. So a couple of quick client stories for you. Sometimes when you meet with a client, it is a really quick, can answer the question and get it done right away. So my first client I met with about 3 years ago for a 1-hour TA session. They got the information, what they needed, and they went on their own to continue to work. And then recently I was at an E for All pitch contest, and this client came up to me and said, I was thinking of calling you. I have something I need to talk my options through. So we set up an appointment for the next week, and the client was looking for a way to address a short-term cash flow challenge. They were thinking that their only options were to take money out of their retirement, use all their savings, or put it on their credit card. Well, we looked at what other options there were and came up with the best option seemed to be to approach their bank for a line of credit, and reminding them that banks want to lend money to the people that don't need it. They applied to their bank and had a line of credit in a week, and their short-term problem was resolved. Now, this is Chase, and he has a yoga and kayak business. We are on Cape Cod, so that is looking over Provincetown Harbor. And Chase came to us. He was starting his business for both the kayak and the yoga, and he had purchased a business condo to operate it out of. I met Chase at an E4All pitch contest, and he had very little business experience prior to that, and he needed some help setting some short-term goals for the business and figuring out how to do his record keeping and use QuickBooks. We also spent time together talking about insurance, unemployment insurance, what he should expect related to running payroll, setting goals about cash flow projections. And I was able to provide an understanding of what his accountant was asking him to do. He had a listed to-do list, but he didn't really know what that meant. So we were able to help him with a lot of that. Recently, he called me and asked about getting a CDP microloan. Well, knowing that he's been bankable already, we looked into that a little bit further and decided that the right choice for him would be to approach his bank for a line of credit. He was looking to grow the business and needed some extra cash in order to make that happen. I'm waiting to hear now whether he got the loan or not, but I think he had a pretty good chance. And his quote for our organization related to our work together was, "She sat by my side and taught me what I needed to know, and in the process saved me thousands of dollars. There are so many things to focus on as a business owner. The skills I gained working with Pam gave me the ability to focus on all of those pieces of the puzzle." And my third story is about Isabel Souza Studio. Isabel is a local potter. She had worked out of her home for many years and did pop-ups and had online sales and did markets, but she decided it was time to move to a brick and mortar location. Through our conversations, she decided to change her organization from a sole proprietor to an LLC. She also needed funds to get the brick and mortar location open. We worked on her business plan, and I explained to her the importance of cash flows, not just for the lender, but for her to feel comfortable with her decision to move into this area as well. She was able to get a loan from her bank to open the brick and mortar, and now shares how important cash flow projections are when starting a business enterprise. She had told our organization, "Pam made it a smooth process connecting me with the appropriate resources. I don't know how I would have pulled it off without her." In addition, she participated in some of our workshops for the art of doing business as a creative in Provincetown. And after the workshop and working with her, I invited her to participate at a session that we had in Harwich, another location where we provided for artists. And it gave her the opportunity to really understand what she learned and share with others of her experience. So we did a presentation together, what I would talk about sort of the skills that they needed, and she would say how it affected her. And it was a great opportunity for both of us. And
here's our contact information, and please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Tricia. So I have some questions. So I saw your presentations, obviously, and I saw Yadi's presentation. I want to get a little bit of a sense of how those two how the two programmatic efforts can interact with each other. So one question is, so the Yadi talked about the $7.5 million coming from the state of Massachusetts. Does that pay for your time? Is that working capital? Is that what exactly does that what does that pay for in the context of CDP?
It pays for our time.
Right.
So it pays for staff time to be able to provide these services to our clients.
Wonderful. Okay. Kind of what I thought. And so you mentioned a little bit of the interaction that the CDP has with MACDC. Lobby Day was one of them. I think your CEO sits on the board. Have either of you been to the Milking Institute trainings that Yadi talked about, or do you know anyone who has been?
Yes, so I took a meeting facilitation workshop through that, which was fantastic. And as Pam mentioned, we both have participated in the small business certificate, which is I think a 12-week program, Yari, where it is really an introduction to providing SBTA.
And of course, others, feel free to, I should have mentioned, put questions in the chat or come off of mute. We'll do this for about another 5 minutes or so before we move to breakout rooms. So Yadi, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What pieces of the presentation that the Pam and Tricia offered do you think are have you either used or found most valuable when it comes to lobbying for this program at the State House?
I think that the number of people served throughout the year is really key, right? It shows impact, which is really what our state legislators care about, right? Like how many people is this impacting, how many communities, how is this making our main streets better or our local economy, how is it growing? And so just showing those numbers, ensuring that we have something called the goal survey that we collect at MACDC on a yearly basis. And so our SBTAs report on how many entrepreneurs they were able to service and how much lending they were able to provide, whether it be internally at their own organizations or just like doing a soft hand to another organization like a bank or CDFI. So I think that's the most important key for advocacy to us. And really, like even if we could have small businesses that could come on lobby day or whenever they meet with their legislators is super important so that they can really see the impact and hear directly from them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you mentioned banks. This is kind of a question for everyone. You mentioned banks. I'm kind of wondering what the engagement from the private sector looks like from your organization's point of view, both CDP and MACDC, because I'm curious, like there's an interest here, right? I mean, banks get lenders, get borrowers on the other end of these programs, and Pam and Tricia mentioned a few examples of that from the businesses they have served. So what does that look like from a systemic point of view, though? Like, how does CDP engage banks directly, kind of both with their businesses, but also kind of for themselves, or what does that look like? And similarly for MACDC?
I could start with how it is with MACDC, because it is different, right? Like I think that banks would care to talk about a CDC on actual numbers and who they're targeting, while for us, we could only ask for funding of local banks to make sure that there is a sort of training and development initiatives to support RTA providers. So most recently we had Citizens Bank give us like $20,000 to ensure that some of the programs that I listed on my presentation are supported, right? So by the Milking Institute, and same with local foundations, right? So making sure that the arena of TA providers have the supports that they need. And so that's what they're funding through us at MACDC.
And I'll say that for our organization, in addition to the SBTA funding that we get through MACDC, through the SBTA program, we also get funding from some of our regional banks. So they will provide us funding to provide the services that we do. We have local bankers on our own lending committee so that we do have relationships developed with those local bankers. We also refer people back and forth. I have many clients that have arrived at the bank to apply for their first business loan, and the banker feels that they're not quite ready for that yet. And they'll say, you know, you really should talk to the CDP and then come back after you've put some things in place. And vice versa. Like I had mentioned, I have clients come to me who really should be getting a loan from the bank, and I help them prepare for that.
And then I think the last thing I would just add is that we have gotten some grants from local bank or from banks to expand our outreach to historically under-resourced communities. So that's another way that the banks have interacted with our organization.
Okay. And the other had a question. So within the program, the SBTA program at the state level, are there any kind of stipulations, either formal or informal, as to how geographically diverse the money has to go? If you know what I mean, like,
Yeah,
for
so
example,
there aren't, of course, like there aren't stipulations specifically made by our legislature. It really depends on what nonprofit is ready to provide that service, right? So of course, the support looks bigger and more dense in the urban areas, like, you know, Boston, eastern side of the state. Once you get to central Massachusetts and eastern in Western Mass, there are fewer SBTA providers that are now having to provide services to multiple counties, right? So really it depends on the capacity of the nonprofit and if they are willing to provide that service with the funding support getting that they're getting from the legislature.
and are there any parts of the state that are underserved, would you say, that lack that capacity to be able to take on this program?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the hill towns, very close to Western Massachusetts, like Springfield, Holyoke, Chicopee, Mass. All of those, we have a great majority of underserved communities in that area that are not being touched by, or at least not being covered by the few organizations that are out there. So yeah, I would say there. And I mean, I don't know if you can speak to Pam and Tricia about the Cape and Island areas. You guys are really sort of like the leaders doing some of this work in partnership with the chamber.
Yeah, I mean, outside of our organization, the other organization on the Cape that gets SBTA funding is a CDFI organization where they focus most of their work on lending. But we're really the only one on the Cape that does all three legs of the SBTA work.
And then from the federal side, does to our earlier conversation, does the federal SBA play a role in your I guess it's mostly for CDP, play a role in your organization directly, or is this mostly kind of through banks and the loan guarantees that come through the SBA?
Yeah, we don't have any direct relationship with SBA because we're not a CDFI, so we would not be lending through their CDFI program. We have relationships with people at the SBA that we interact with at chambers and other meetings and share resources with our clients that are available to them. And we also work with SCORE too. You know, they are another leg of the SBA. So we do have a longstanding relationship with our local Cape and Island SCORE mentors.
Yeah, and then I heard someone earlier mention VBOC. We do have a relationship with Jenny Murphy from the New England VBOC, and we promote their programming as well.
Okay. Are there any other questions before we go to breakout rooms from anyone in the audience or for each other? Okay. Kadesha, do you want to facilitate going out to breakouts, or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, that works. Hi, everyone. So we're going to move into the breakout room portion of today's meeting. Really a chance to break out into smaller groups to kind of discuss what we've heard here today and discuss even your own SBTA work in your regions. And so the groups are going to be about 5 to 6 people each. We're going to do breakout rooms for about 15 to 20 minutes, and they'll be pretty loosely facilitated. So we have some discussion questions that are going to be dropped in the chat here shortly, if not already. And so you can refer to those to guide your discussions, but also feel free to venture into any other area of discussions or insights that you want to hear others' thoughts on. And again, we'll have about 20 minutes, maybe 15, depending on how things are going. And then we'll come back to the full group for a few notes and announcements before we close out. And so this meeting is scheduled to go to 3:15. So we'll be in the breakout rooms again for about 15 to 20 minutes and then have a short closeout with a few notes and announcements. So you should be able to see some breakout rooms popping up on your screen to go into. And so you can go ahead and join those, and we'll be back in a few. Hi again, everyone. I see people coming in from the breakout rooms. We'll wait a few seconds for others to join in the main room.
Right. So we had a really good breakout room. Ours was the best. So thank you for those who were there. So this concludes. Thank you, everybody. We hope that you learned a little bit about the state of Massachusetts. We hope you learned a little bit more about Cape Cod and CDP and the Massachusetts Association of CDCs, and how these kind of how the relationships and networks that are built at the regional and state level ultimately go to help support the work and help it be more robust, efficient, innovative, and ultimately effective. We have 3 more of these coming for in the rest of the year. If we wouldn't mind putting that slide up with those dates and times. But we will, in July, focus on the Open to Business program for the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers in the state of Minnesota. They are essentially positioning themselves as consultants to units of local government to implement small business programs. On August 21st, we will be featuring the Building Memphis and their Community Navigator pilot program and Small Business Ecosystem Hub. That's something they've been doing the last couple of years, and they'll be doing a presentation with us. And in November, the Philadelphia Association of CDCs will focus on some of their economic development work, including but not limited to their commercial corridor and Main Streets program. And Joanna here will be, wave Joanna. I think Joanna will be playing a role in that in November. Geisha, Chance, is there anything I'm forgetting before I pass it off to the Massachusetts folks to wish us well?
There will be a post meeting poll, or not poll, but what am I trying to say? Frank, do you know what word I'm looking for?
Evaluation.
Evaluation, yes. And so that'll be popping up as you exit the meeting. And if you all could fill that out, helps us a lot in guiding our future meetings. And so just a reminder there before I pass it on.
Yeah. Pam, Yadi, Trisha, would you add anything before we depart? Only one at a time.
All right,
Good.
Good, Jared.
No, I just wanted to say thank you all for really highlighting this program. I think it's important to have a variety of different areas in the United States to just showcase what they're doing in their respective states so that we can learn from each other. You know, what's done in Massachusetts may not be done in, you know, Minnesota and other states. And so every time I join a COA event or a conference is you know, very useful for me in learning. So thank you for having me. And so if you have any questions, feel free to connect. I'm going to drop my LinkedIn on the chat as well.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again for Jari for inviting us, and COA, of course. And I'm excited. The July 10th upcoming presentation in July is directly on point with one of our strategic planning goals. So you may see our faces here as a participant.
We'd love that. Yes, and thank you. Please drop contact information in the chat. We should have focused on that a little bit more. This is a peer convening, so. Well, thank
and
you.
I'll just say thank you. And I had a lot of great questions in our chat, in our breakout room. So it was good.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good holiday weekend and hope to see you in July.
Thanks,
Thank
Frank.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.